The Branding Your Business podcast is for small business owners looking to build a customer favorite brand and a value-driven business. From solo shows covering marketing tactics to experts sharing their brand stories, each episode delivers actionable insights for entrepreneurs who want to impact the world. We're sharing how strategic moves and authentic connections can build a profitable business minus the burnout. Tune into the Branding Your Business podcast with me, Praise Santos McKenna of Come Plum, to design a brand your audience adores while building a life you love. Welcome back to the Branding Your Business podcast. I have someone really special here today. It's a soul sister of mine here in San Francisco. We have Claire of Moodelier sharing a bit of her brand story and how we can also implement a lot of this wisdom that she's been learning and teaching others into our own lives. But I want to introduce her very personally. And that, did you know that Claire was my first friend basically in San Francisco? We met at a Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, that was 12 years ago, right?
Almost 13.
Oh my gosh, yes, in 2011.
Yeah.
2011. We were just babes back then, like truly. Maybe I'll have to find our picture from 2011 and put it here on the screen of just like, look at our eyebrows, our hair
Or
color.
maybe not. Embarrassing.
Okay, maybe just DM me if you want just like a one-on-one photo from us in 2011. But Claire is a true artist and a visionary, and I've been able to witness her up close, take a lot of the dreams that she has for her life and how she wants to help people implement creativity in their life and see her really carried out. So we'll kind of get more into her story there, but I'd love you to introduce yourself more to our audience. Maybe, you can share a little bit about how you spend your time, what you're up to these days.
Yeah. My name is Claire. I am originally from China. I would say describe myself as a jack of all trades creative person. In the past, I've done photography, I've done styling, prop stylist, site designer, did events. We host our first Friends Giving Friendiversary for 7 years ago.
Yes.
That kind of like kicked off some of my ideas of, setting the stage. Later on, did other like experience events, and then lead me to starting my own business. Moodelier is all about setting the mood for brands and creatives that both, digitally and physically. So I had a physical brand or collection where it's all set props and home decor and product retail display. But then I'll also have, at the same time, I have this holistic approach. I think we also need education on how to, set up these stages, moods. So I partnered with different creators and designers who are just such an expert and hero in their industry in my platform. So they teach. So I had this educational platform for creativity and also this collection physical product that can bring your creativity to life. And then later on, when I discovered generative AI and I realized, okay, like that is a moment I realized, what is future holds for our creative industry, and so little of us knows what that means. So I really felt like sense of a responsibility that I need to like kind of take in charge and learn and almost like dig into it so I can report back to my creative community. So since 2022, I have been doing a lot of that, and now I'm majority of my time I kind of devoted to still learning, but then also be an AI creative educator and a consultant for other business and creatives, and I run boot camps. I have since trained a lot of Sephora creative team and some leadership role under the LVMH group for AI, implementing AI tools for their creative process, that both responsibly and practically and as ethically as it can be. So yeah, I guess that's in a nutshell.
This woman, many times, multidimensional. And I think that's an important part of your story. And I feel as if our audience, a lot of small business owners can also learn from, is you have been so adaptable. You have been adaptable both in your life. I feel like you had to move here, learn a whole new culture and adapt here. But then also with your business, you had to adapt with what your strengths were of, we have hosted events together and we really hone into Claire's creative director strengths, which I love that you discovered from
hosting. So it was called the Friendsgiving Friendiversary. Again, we met on Thanksgiving Day back in 2011. And then 5 years later in 2016, we threw a bomb party. I still look at those photos.
Really good.
And we need to recreate it.
Yeah.
Because we've already passed now our 10-year mark. And so do we do 15
going on
years?
13 years. Yeah. I mean, that was such great party in the sense, I look back in those photos still so solid.
So timeless. Okay, just imagine this. We had a bathtub in our venue.
Yeah.
What did we fill it with?
A ping pong ball?
With a ping pong balls. And then we just had like a really bright direct light. So it looked very like Vogue editorial. We just
but there was like a black and white party in the black and white rooms. And everything was just so classic and timeless. And your editing was so beautiful. Those images turned out fantastic.
Which is so fun just because right now, like Claire's aesthetic, there's so much color to it too. And she is a jack of all trades. She can adapt and do so much. But again, going back to your adaptability, you would take information about yourself and you would start creating all these new things. And even with seeing you birth Moodelier and it being these beautiful set pieces that I know I have photos of too, and that creators can use for their own photography and set design. But you kept adapting of like, okay, what does my audience need? They need to learn about AI now because it's such a interesting opportunity and almost a threat to some creators. So you became an expert for that, and you just kept on adapting, which is huge. Is that just your personality is to be adaptable? Is it something you learned? How did you become this person who was just being able to respond to the environment and circumstances she was in?
I think it is how my brain functions, but then also my personality, ADHD, being an ADHD brain, having an ADHD brain that it makes you get bored easily. And it's called an INCAP, like you thrive by interest, challenge, novelty, what is the C? Challenge, already said that. And passion. A is, I forgot what is A, but basically all these things makes you feel motivated by these things. That is different than the neurotypical brain. So that's a part of it. But then also being an immigrant here, like you have to adopt, and otherwise you won't be able to survive. You won't last here. So I feel like I had to like force myself adapt a lot of things, like culture-wise, or all these things are so new, and I have no family here. So Praise become like my first friend, but like she was also like my first English teacher, and she was like my first of a lot of things, and such a good role model for me to look up to, because I feel like as age of like you're in your early 20s, yes, I was an adult, but I was also feel like there is a lot of things you can go wrong when you move to another country. Like you could be easily like addicted to drugs, or like just being hanging out with the wrong crowd. But like I feel like having you in my life has really kind of put me into a really good trajectory where like I know what is good, what is bad, and what it just was really good for me. So I learned a lot of things from you, and adapt a lot of good traits and character from you. Yeah, but I think overall it's a combination of how my brain works, but then also situationally, like you have to, you being put into the spot that you have to adapt, otherwise you just won't last.
1,000%. And yeah, what I hear from you is one, noticing how your brain works, right? You are also someone who was diagnosed with ADHD, but you even have an ADHD coach, right? To help you use your brain to its best advantages. And that's what we also teach small business owners too. What are the things that make you, your life experiences, what you've been gifted with too, and how do you harness that power too? But another important thing, and this is really huge, we already know that running a business is kind of lonely, right? Because oftentimes, of course, we have teams of contractors and sometimes we have employees, but most of the time you're doing it by yourself. So it's really this community that you're surrounded with. Claire and I started our businesses kind of like around the same time. Like we moved here, finished school, we were in our 20s, and we were just figuring stuff out and just piecing things together. And I'm so glad that we could figure stuff
You're definitely
together.
A few chapter ahead of me. But I feel like that was really selfishly was really good for me, because looking you how you do things, and like I can learn from you directly, that was really, really helpful to be having somebody who is just like maybe like a few chapter before you that you can learn and you can grow together. That was really helpful for me.
And that's huge because there are so many people chapters ahead of me that I learned from too. And I am learning from Claire a lot now too, because I feel like you were someone who went headfirst into the online business space and you knew immediately like, oh, hey, I'm very San Francisco based. Her reach is really international. It's really like nationwide just because the tools that she teaches, everyone kind of needs in 2024 to adapt and to be more relevant here in this day and age, which I want to jump into that too, right? Like of these boot camps that you're hosting as well as helping a lot of creatives figure out how to make generative images that matches their brand. Can you, I feel like I said a lot of lingo. Can you, in more everyday people's terms, describe the boot camps that you host and how you teach people?
Basically, it's really straightforward. I kind of meet where people are. I send out a sort of a list of questionnaires and ask what their skill sets of those tools I teach and how familiar they are with. So I kind of cater. It's a very intimate bootcamp, so I cater based on their needs and where they're at. And then it's all about like image, so generative image, and focus on marketing and visual content. Think about primarily product campaign, product images, where that is not a conceptualizing stage anymore. I really actively trying to practice to see how can we incorporate generative AI tool from the beginning of your creative process to the end of it, like throughout, but still with, they call it a human in the loop approach, meaning like every critical decision making, you still need to have a human in the loop. We're helping you to, so not everything I teach is automation. It's not fully automated. It's actually just using a few tools together, but it still involves a lot of human touches and human eyes. So I think that's where it went wrong with a lot of misconceptions or misunderstanding about AI tools. Either people think AI tools can do everything, or they think AI tool can do nothing because the quality is so bad. Is because there are a lot of people trying to use AI tools in such a way that they're not a industry expert or have no domain knowledge. And they just like, oh, let me use this tool for something I completely have zero experience with. Obviously, the quality is not going to look good. So my approach is all about implementing the tools in your existing industry where you're really familiar with what is the current workflow and setup, but then use it in a way that kind of enhance your workflow.
Yeah. So when Claire was first teaching her courses, before even a lot of generative AI came out, her pieces would help photographers make incredible product photography, right? It would really enhance it. And now if you watch some of her things on Instagram, some of her reels, and some of the before and afters of the people she's teaching, it's those same like product photography principles, right? Like, oh, here's a can of one of our favorite soft drinks or sparkly waters, right? But how can we use still like that base photography, that human in the loop to still take that picture?
Totally.
But it's enhancing it, like bringing in this other A tool and another A tool to have then more multiple options.
Totally.
And I love that idea too of this conception of there's always this creative director. You also have to have this critical thinking brain in the loop too to still make that image pop, because it's also like for me, as I've grown my business, the dream is to hire team members and contractors and just like let them go and trust them. But actually, most of my job now is managing them, and it's giving feedback, and it's saying yes or no, I like this or don't like this. And it seems like that's how AI is working too, and what you're teaching as well, of like, okay, it gave me this as its first draft. Now let me tweak it. I want a little bit of this. Is that the pattern you've been seeing amongst what you're learning and what your students are learning?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much learn how to direct and control the tools and mix with your own expertise and your own creative vision, instead of just letting AI to do everything and using that as your first generation as the final draft. Then that's definitely not something I approach for. And it is a lot of human work in terms of, yes, we're using AI tool to assist us, but I would say like a lot of images I create still takes me many hours to just fine tune it or edit it in Photoshop, or, you know, changing the character or changing the props. There's a lot of thought I carefully put through. It's still a full-on creative process, just with a different tool and media.
100%, which I know that a lot of our small business owners who listen to the podcast, who watch these videos, they are also the jack of all trades, right? They're also creating the content, also providing their service. And then also now they're like, okay, well, now I have to be on top of these AI tools and just like implementing them. What advice would you give to someone who's like, I want to bring AI into my business, but now there's hundreds of tools out there? Are there some you'd recommend, some kind of best practices as these jack of all trades are starting to dip their toe into this world of new tools?
Yeah, definitely stick with the tools that's, you know, more foundational, more famous, that has millions of users. Don't try to jump on the trends of, oh, there's a new tool came out, let me try it and subscribe it. Through my experience or learning and teaching, I mean, once you have a framework or tool stack that you stick with that just give you good results, there really isn't no point of trying a million other tools unless you find a tool that is irreplaceable in your process, which that does happen, but rarely. So think of like when you are adopting tools, and obviously like the foundational for language models, use ChatGPTs, or if you a Google, then you can use Gemini. If you like responsible AI, then you can use Cloud from Anthropic. But those are like the three major players. There isn't really no point of try to use other tools. And a lot of the tools are built on top of these models anyway. So you know like the tech is from these companies. So I think just think what are like the major player in the industry. So that's for on the chatbot or large language model side. But for image side, and we have players like Midjourney, Firefly from Adobe. And then we have maybe DALL-E, but I would say DALL-E is probably that latest version doesn't really generating a perfect image compared to, I would say, Firefly and Midjourney. And there really is a point to try so many other image generation tools. Or there's Stable Diffusion, which is open source. If you're more of a tech person, then that's probably your setup. But for like more designers and consumer based users, I recommend Midjourney and Firefly, and depends on what company you work with. Your legal team may or may not approve for Midjourney just because the training data set reason. But the point is to try to only use the tools or adopt or spend your time, money, and energy on the tools that is very established, instead of just using a new tool that comes to your way that they maybe raise like 1 million or 2 or not bootstrapping, then you don't know if they're going to last for the next 6 months. So I try to kind of stick with that mindset when I adopt tools.
Yeah. And that's huge. Like sticking with the classics, like the ChatGPTs, Firefly, like these are ones that have bigger companies that are back behind it, and not being reliant on there's cool ones coming out, but if you start relying on some of the smaller ones and then they start getting bugs or they go out of business, too, then you're kind of stuck.
Yes, totally.
Well, so a lot of what we do as a brand studio, when folks end up hiring us, we help work on their full brand, right? Like their brand story, brand images, brand guide. And I know even for my own clients of like, oh, how do we make things easier? And I stumbled on something of like, oh, here's AI creating logos, right? There's AI, right? We can use like ChatGPT to help write out some of your brand story. For those folks who are really at the beginning stages of their brand, maybe they don't hire a studio, they're trying to see if they can do some AI by themselves. Like, Claire, this is like a real question for you. Haven't rehearsed it. Like, what could folks be using? Like, if there's a simple recipe, if they were creating like their own brand identity, what tools would you recommend for them picking out their colors, picking out their logo or their fonts? Are there tools out there to help them do that?
Brand identity in terms of like on the visual side?
Yeah, on the visual.
I mean, you can even just use Midjourney for that. You can ask a color palette. You can ask a logo. You can ask anything. You can ask a landing page even. So I know a lot of people are using it. And Midjourney is really good with aesthetics. But obviously it's not native designed for a brand identity. So you really do need to know the fundamentals what you're asking for. And then that's partially is how you can better control these tools is you know what you're asking for. So I recommend if you are somebody who has never done branding or brand identity, then maybe that is not for you. But if you are a seasoned designer or branding designer, I think Midjourney is great. On top of my head, I don't know a one tool that is native designed for doing brand identity stuff. But I know like Adobe Illustrator implemented a lot of generative feature, and there are probably some auto color palettes selections or collections there. But overall, none of these, like, don't trust just one tool. Like here we go, your brand identity, and this is your logo. It's gonna be crap. Like you have to kind of edit on your own. Again, like you need to know what you're doing in order to get the good results with help of AI.
Yes. Again, keeping a human in the loop, because I will say that logo AI thing that I was using, it helped honestly generate ideas for me, and then I ended up designing it anyways.
Right.
Yeah. And so even using it as research or just to help your brain get started, which I've seen what a lot of people do, and even they write copy. They're like, help me write a sales page for this. And they end up editing 90% of it, but it helped them get like a head start. And I think that is still a worthwhile tool then to use, just because oftentimes when you look at a blank canvas, we're so intimidated by it. So I love your advice of, if you're a seasoned designer, go for it, but don't trust it completely just because it might be crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a tool that you would want to be made? Like, is there a tool, a gap that you see there, like, people keep on trying this, or there's this problem I wish AI could solve? Is there anything that you in this space have been seeing, thinking of?
I desperately want to help creatives to make additional income with help of AI, just because when I first discovered it and I realized, like everything is just scraping the internet and training the stuff without asking people's permissions, and there's all these like ethical issues and the questions goes into training a models, then that it's still really unresolved, and I just don't think that it's a sustainable ecosystem for content creation moving forward. So that is a major issue that isn't really a tool anymore. It's more of like ecosystem issues I really want to help to resolve, but there isn't really a straightforward path because it's very complicated issue to resolve. But overall, I wanted to help to kind of resolve to make the AI generated content ecosystem more sustainable, or even just period like content ecosystem moving forward, because not everybody is using AI tool to help them in any stage of their content creation. So we have a lot of synthetic data coming to content ecosystem, or semi-synthetic data. Yeah, so that's something I really wanted to help and change. So that comes from like maybe the tech side, the policy maker side. There's just a lot of moving parts. But yeah, it's not really a tool, but more of like a issue with the ecosystem. Yeah.
Justice of the creators, like the creative minds that help create something, instead of AI just scrapping it and grabbing it for free. How can these creators be financially compensated for what they're contributing to the online space, to the AI space too? Would love to see that too. And it does sound like maybe it's policy, or maybe it's
it needs to be like all of it. It needs to be on the policy side, that's a society sort of a culture side, and then also the tech side. So all parts,
the whole ecosystem bringing justice. Let's rewind it back a little bit, Claire, of a lot of folks who listen to this podcast, they're maybe 1 to 3 years into business, so still pretty fresh. And let's think back when you were first starting. I couldn't have imagined either of us being where we are now. Like, 5-10 years into this. What is some advice that you wish someone first starting out, even the past version of you just starting out, what is some helpful advice for creatives just starting, small businesses just starting, that would be an encouragement to them in this season?
Knowing you're definitely going to make a mistake, and I fell a lot along the way, but just kind of have to do it anyways and taking a lot of actions so you learn from your mistake and don't feel too much of a pressure or imposter syndromes that like we're all in it to figuring it out and you're not super behind compared to your peers. Just kind of give yourself a push and almost a permission to grant yourself a permission to allow yourself to do these without too much of a anxiety and additional stress and kind of doubting about yourself's capabilities, because you will learn so much along the way while you're doing it, while you're making mistakes.
Yeah, the grace to just try. You'll make mistakes no matter what, and sometimes you'll do it right. And so you won't get there unless you try. I love that, Claire. How can folks find you? How can they partake of some of the boot camps you're hosting? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, also LinkedIn, pretty active on the both, just at Claire Xue, Claire Xue. And LinkedIn is also Claire Xue. Yeah, I post a lot of information, and I have a newsletter that is free weekly, and you can also subscribe.
Yeah, so good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. This is awesome.
So good.